I'm Steve Myers, Pioneer Field Sales Agronomist in Southwest Iowa. Just kind of going to walk through a quick planter overview today. A little bit of snow on the ground outside. I know a lot of guys getting their planters in their shed, getting ready for the 2025 planting season. So we're going to cover the planter all the way through. We're going to start with the drawbar. This particular planter is a 3-point hookup. One of the most important things going through the field as we start out is kind of selecting our speed we're going to be planting corn at, either with the high speed or even a slow speed planter. Picking 3, 4, 5, 6 miles an hour, making sure we have somebody going alongside of us and making sure that drawbar is running flat and true. We want to make sure our row units are squared in the ground, so we're not plowing, we're not dragging, we're not lifting up out of the ground, that kind of thing. It also will affect our coulters as well as our trash whippers as we move throughout the planting season. The next place we're going to start to look at will be the row unit itself. As we dig into the row unit here, we want to make sure our nut's good and tight. That'll help with our sealing for our back pressures to maintain that. We'll go ahead and pull the plate off and look in here. Look at our seal, make sure it's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's really cutting off all the air from being pulled on the outside from the vac itself. We also want to make sure our knockoff wheels are in good shape. They're not broken, bent, and they're all standing the way they're supposed to be to knock the seed off the disc. So when we move to our brusher, we want to make sure it's not in bad shape either. This one clearly is in really good shape, fresh. We didn't leave it in the planter all year. We made sure our tensioners were loose. We put them back in, make sure we're getting those tensioners put back tight again. We may have a lot of problems if we don't do that. When we get them back tight, we also want to make sure that our motor on the side here is turning freely and able to turn that brush. You'll be able to tell really fast if it's too tight or too loose and make sure we have our adjustments correct on that. The other thing we wanted to hit on, make sure everybody kind of gets a good look at, is the seed sensor here. We want to make sure this isn't blocked, make sure it's free of dust and debris. Sometimes we're going through the field, we can pick up some stalks and different debris that'll get stuck in there. We want to make sure this is clear of all that kind of debris going through to make sure we're getting a good seed reading back to the cab. So we went from the top to the bottom of the unit. We're going to work from the front to the back now as well. We'll start with the trash whippers. We kind of want those set basically almost floating above the ground, just basically doing just what they, as the name describes, kind of moving the trash out of the way. We're not plowing dirt, we're not making furrows. Obviously we get a big rain that can make for a mess in a lot of fields. When we talk about coulters then as well, we want those set slightly above our disc openers. We don't want it to be plowing deeper than our disc openers and creating a dry trench for that seed to sit and dry out and chase water away from the furrow. So we're going to go ahead and move to our disc openers and our gauge wheels. On our disc openers, ideally we'd like them around 15 inches in diameter. As we work down towards 14.5 inches, it's probably time to look at changing those out. When we're adjusting those, we also kind of look at a blade contact of 1.5 to 2 inches. The old business card test, putting those in there and basically getting 1.5 to 2 inches gap between those cards. Going to the gauge wheel, we want to make sure these are set correctly right against the disc opener. We don't want too much dirt and mud able to pack in there. If you do see a gap, now that means we have too big of a gap and it's time to adjust these back here by the gauge wheel's arms. Another common wear part on these planters is the scrapers themselves on the disc opener. We want to make sure those are touching the wheel in a good way and able to get all the mud and trash off the disc opener itself to stop any kind of sliding or pinching. So moving back to the closers, this one here has pneumatic closers on it. A lot of guys run anywhere from 3 to 5 pounds on these. What we don't want too much down pressure on that, creating a drag or a ribbon behind it too much. We want a little bit of a ribbon, but not so much that it's dragging and creating a problem back there in the trench or dragging seed out of the dirt. Now we're going to move on to depth. These are set clear out of the ground right now. It makes it easy use getting the brush meter into the planter. But when we're doing this, let's just not check 1 or 2 rows. Let's make sure we're getting out and digging through to make sure we're getting a steady 2 inches. On these planters, I know we always think 4 and 3 or 4 and 4 is where we've always run. Obviously, planter parts wear a lot differently row by row, depending on terrain, trash, what we're looking at. So the biggest thing we really want to reiterate is making sure we're getting consistent seed depth clear across every row in the planter. Another thing guys use to check their gauge wheel depth and seed setting for seed depth is a set and seed or some 2x4 jigs they build. They put this on the ground on a floor jack and crank it up. And what you do is wait for your disc openers at the bottom of this pan. And on planters, especially with more wear on the gauge wheel arms, you can see different settings throughout the planter in every row. And it kind of allows you to pick and choose instead of just saying we're 4 and 4 every year. Rather, we can kind of set and pick and choose where we're at to get that maximum 2-inch depth or 2.5 inch depth that we're looking for. One thing we did want to hit on is everybody's downforce system's different. This one here is Deere's hydraulic downforce system. Obviously consult your handbook, your manual, and your dealership to talk about whether it's air, pneumatic, or different things like that, even springs even more that guys can hit on to make sure we're adjusting those the correct way. We're going to move back to the vac. Now we want to make sure our hoses don't have any leaks or crimps in them. Also check your blow tubes here and make sure we don't see any wear there. These can wear a lot of holes in them from folding and unfolding, as well as the amount of graphite and topper running through them. Make sure you don't get any problems there with holes coming from that side. So another thing we found just walking around talking about planters is you want to check these manifolds back here too. On this bean planer in particular, we found a hose that's broke in two. It'll need just kind of cut off and crimped and put back in place. But another thing nice to check out before we get to the field comes planting time. Another thing we wanted to hit on was Pioneer's Plantability app. Please consult your local sales representatives about it. What it basically does, we have a seed lab in Johnson that tests anything from 0% humidity to 100% humidity, from wet and cold conditions clear up to dry and hot conditions. Basically selecting from anything from a Kinsey planter, a White planter, a John Deere planter, you name it. Different various settings for vac pressures and other stuff like that to go ahead and maximize the plantability in your planter. Thank you for your time and have a great 2025 planting season.
That concludes this Pioneer Agronomy video podcast. Visit our page on pioneer.com and follow us on Twitter and Facebook for more agronomy insights.